Some weeks ago, Drivetime travelled to Leitrim to report on the entry of a new word to the National Dictionary: fracking. Fracking, or hydraulic fracturing, is a relatively new method of drilling for gas that may yet be employed to extract gas reserves that we know are locked underground in the northwest of the country, but have up to date been too expensive to access. While the possible dividend to the country has been welcomed locally, there are concerns about the possible environmental degradation that may come as a result of widespread fracking.
Over the years we have wind farms, we had open cast mining, and there's no free lunches. If you're carrying out exploration and you're drilling for gas or drilling for oil, obviously that there's an impact on the environment, and we're maybe a little suspect that the whole thing hasn't been come out into public domain and what they hope to do and where the potential drill holes are.
Sean Wynne of the Loch Allen Conservation Group speaking to me in Drumshanbo a few weeks ago. One of the environmental downsides of fracking is that the industry in the United States has used thousands of gallons of chemicals in drilling for gas, which have, in some instances, contaminated water drinking supplies.
Like, we would take a glass of water out of the tap and it would have like an oil base on the top. You could smell it. It would smell like diesel fuel or some kind of oil thing. I used to go to my sink and get a glass of water. I can't do that anymore. I have to put lotion on my hands 3 times a day from using the wiring. Even wash my dishes or wash my clothes or anything.
The Bush administration, though, gave a free pass to the gas industry on environmental protection. One would hope that the Environment Protection Authority here would hold the industry to a higher standard of regulation. But the ground has been potentially set for another Corrib-style confrontation between industry and protesters. Familiar faces from the Corrib protests have been turning up in Loch Allen for screenings of a documentary called Gasland. And that documentary is presenting a set of concerns around fracking which neither the industry nor government have yet addressed.
Despite documented health risks and environmental impact, hydraulic fracturing is spreading across the globe.
Whoa, Jesus Christ. It's not supposed to do that.
The fracking experience in the US is documented by the documentary Gasland, but how different might things be here? We haven't yet heard from the government what form drilling might take, nor have we heard from either of the companies granted licences. Until now, that is. Tamboran is one of the 2 companies granted a licence by the government to engage in exploratory drilling in the Loch Allen Basin. Its managing director in Ireland is Tony Basley. Good evening to you, Tony.
Good evening, Philip.
In your wildest dreams, Tony, and I'm not going to hold you to this if it doesn't actually turn out to be the case, but what is the best case scenario for how much gas you might actually be able to extract from the Loch Allen Basin?
We're a long way off being even certain there is gas there yet. We know there's some, it's whether we can get it out. But the hope is, and we put it at something like a 70% chance that we can get it out, the hope is that it would supply something like 25% of Ireland's gas supply over a period of maybe 40 to 50 years.
A 70% chance. What percentages do you typically work with in your industry?
Oh, that would be considered a fairly high chance.
Because you could go and drill on what? On a 20% chance, a 10% chance?
Yes, indeed. In fact, for oil particularly, that is the sort of chance you drill on. So yes, we're optimistic. As I say, it's a matter of, we know the gas is there because there's been exploration going on for oil and gas over the last 50 years in County Fermanagh, County Leitrim, Cavan. And deep wells have been drilled, and indeed in those some hydraulic fracturing has taken place. But none of those holes have produced anything that's been economic, and the companies have gone away, the last one about 7 or 8 years ago.
But now the technology has advanced, has improved, and your chances of getting it out have increased. For the next 2 years you're going to engage in exploration, and you are allowed to do some drilling. What form is that going to take?
The drilling we would do would be just to get what we call unweathered samples, fresh samples from a depth that, if you like, haven't had the surface rainwater running through them, just to see, check on the chemical qualities of those samples. Those are shallow boreholes, the sort you would have any quarry company would in fact drill just about 10 centimeters diameter straight down to grab a couple of samples and bring them back up from depths of something rather less than 200 meters. So we call that shallow drilling.
So all going according to plan, and if those indications are positive, when might you actually begin hydraulic fracturing?
Well, what we hold at the moment is a license option for parts of northern Leitrim, Cavan and Sligo, little bits of Cavan, little bits of Sligo, and then a large part of County Fermanagh, about 50-50 in the Republic and 50-50 in Northern Ireland. Yes, after 2 years, we hope to convert that option into an exploration license, and we would then expect to drill on what we call 2 pads, in other words, 2 areas of about a hectare in size, one probably in the north of Ireland and one in North County Leitrim, from which we would put down maybe up to half a dozen holes just to test the shales and indeed to carry out some hydraulic fracturing. Now, that hydraulic fracturing, we understand the concerns. We've seen the Gaslands film, and we've in fact distributed it to people ourselves. I mean, those show some very bad practices in maybe a dozen boreholes in the States, where you have to remember they've drilled between 20 and 40,000 wells for shale gas and are producing something like 20% of the US supply of gas.
Right, and the principal concern there is the chemicals that are pumped down into the holes in the ground along with the water and in order to extract the gas. Are you going to be using those kind of chemicals down the line?
That is the concern, and we've looked into this, and we believe that we can actually do this fracking. We know we can do this fracking without using any chemicals, so we're undertaking not to use any chemicals in the hydraulic fluids that go down. What goes down is water, 99% and 0.5% sand. The sand is in there just to go down, and when the little shale beds down below break up, the sand goes in and acts as a little prop, if you like, holds these beds open, and the gas can then escape. We believe, we know we can do that without using any chemicals.
Does it make it more expensive for you to do that?
Indeed, it involves greater pressures, and because of that, it is more expensive. But really, the people I've been working with say, to heck, we don't want to save just a few euros if it worries people. So we're going to frack using no chemicals.
You have made this undertaking. There is no requirement as of yet, is there, in the regulatory regime for you to do this? There isn't. So you're actually you're ahead of Irish regulation. I suspect. Should we put it like this? We're still 18 months from even getting this license option approved, and the authorities are well aware of what the potential is, and they're certainly going to be watching us and regulating us very carefully. I mean, there's been drilling. I know, but it's interesting, isn't it, that the only regulation that has come so far, it would appear, is from the industry, from yourselves, and there's no such undertaking, I note, from the other company that's been granted a license. I have been trying to speak to them on the record for 4 or 5 months now, and they won't do so. Yes, in Britain, where hydraulic fracturing has been approved and is going ahead in wells, they're very happy that in fact some of the chemicals can be used down the wells, because some of the chemicals they're putting down are things like the liquids you use for washing up. They're there actually just to ease the sand particles getting into the rock. They're not toxic chemicals. You wouldn't drink, for instance, from your washing up liquid in your bottle by the side of the sink, but when that's been diluted, so we say 99 times, you probably hardly even taste it. It certainly isn't toxic in that form. So it is allowed under some regulations, and I don't quite know yet what the Irish and the Northern Irish authorities, because we've got 2 legislations here who are going to be governing. Well, because they haven't set any regulations going to do. As of yet. But Tony, can I just ask you one last question on this, and that is, how absolute is this commitment to not use any of the chemicals? Is it something that is reversible? As far as the company is concerned, no. That is our undertaking. We're not going to use chemicals. Okay. Charles Stanley Smith from Ontario.